Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is...
On February 14, 2018, what began as a morning of love and laughter at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School turned into a national tragedy. Within minutes, the sound of celebration was replaced by chaos, fear, and heartbreak. When the truth came to light, the FBI uncovered footage so haunting it revealed the full horror of what happened that Valentine's Day. And as devastating as it was, this was only one of the moments that left investigators deeply shaken. These are 6 of the most disturbing videos that terrified the FBI. In April of 2024, the quiet community of Geneva, Illinois, was shaken to its core. A woman with significant intellectual disabilities was found to be pregnant while living under the care of a residential facility. The discovery stunned everyone who knew her story. The Kane County Sheriff's Department immediately launched an investigation, faced with the grim reality that someone within the very walls meant to protect her had violated that trust. The facility, known as the Parkland Center, had built its reputation as a non-profit organization dedicated to caring for adults with severe developmental challenges. Among its residents was Kate, a 43-year-old woman who lived with Rett syndrome, a condition that left her unable to speak, stand, or even use her hands independently. It was during a routine medical checkup that staff learned the unimaginable. Kate was several months pregnant. Detectives began a sweeping investigation, compiling a list of all male employees who had worked closely with her in the months prior. One by one, each staff member was interviewed and asked to provide a DNA sample. During these interviews, the tension was palpable. Many of the employees were shocked, unable to fathom that such a thing could have occurred in a place they viewed as safe and compassionate. One employee broke down in tears as he spoke with detectives, his voice trembling as she tried to make sense of the news. "It's just heartbreaking," he said, "because we care so much for the residents. The thought that someone could do this is unbearable." He insisted he had never seen anyone act inappropriately or enter a room they shouldn't have. But before the detectives left, he made one final plea. "Please, catch whoever did this."
Catch the...
As interviews continued, detectives discovered that before the global health crisis, the facility had a strict rule. Only female staff were assigned to care for female residents. But staffing shortages during and after the pandemic forced that policy to change. This revelation would later become key to identifying the suspect. Eventually, investigators turned their attention to a young former employee named Isaiah Fields, a 22-year-old who had briefly worked at the center the previous year. Isaiah was a local amateur boxer and appeared calm and polite when detectives first approached him. During their initial conversation, he explained that he had only been employed there for a short period, spending most of his time in training under supervision. "I was never really alone with anyone," he said. "I was always shadowed by another staff member."
Okay, so everything I did was shadowed by another person. Okay, so you're always with somebody for the most part?
However, as detectives continued gathering testimonies, inconsistencies began to surface. Several of Isaiah's former co-workers recalled that his responsibilities went beyond training videos. They stated that he participated directly in caregiving activities, helping residents bathe, change clothes, and move between rooms. One trainer explained, he was being taught how to assist residents with daily care, lifting, dressing, cleaning, everything needed for their comfort. When asked about his behavior, many described him as odd and disconnected. One colleague said, "He questioned everything, even simple procedures. He just didn't seem to take it seriously." Others noted moments when his body language made them uneasy, though nothing concrete enough to raise alarms at the time. After DNA samples from every male employee were processed, the results revealed a match. The biological evidence pointed directly to Isaiah Fields. On May 10, 2024, he was taken into custody for questioning. During the interrogation, Isaiah appeared nervous and emotional. As officers read him his rights, he insisted he had no idea why he was there. The detectives calmly asked him to recount his time at the facility, hoping to gauge his reaction. But as the conversation progressed, Isaiah's composure began to crumble. He bowed his head, whispering prayers under his breath. repeatedly asking for guidance. At one point, he spoke quietly about his difficult childhood. "I never had a father," he said, tears welling in his eyes. "I never really had someone to teach me right from wrong." The investigators gave him water and tried to keep him calm, telling him to breathe and take his time. But as they left the room, he sat alone, realizing the seriousness of what was unfolding. Moments later, when detectives returned, Isaiah began pleading for mercy. He spoke through tears, saying, "Please, give me one chance. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll turn my life around. Please don't let me lose everything." It was a haunting scene. A young man grappling with the magnitude of his actions and the irreversible damage they had caused. Tragically, the ordeal did not end there. According to multiple news reports, Kate developed a dangerous pregnancy complication known as preeclampsia. Despite extensive medical intervention, her baby was born prematurely and spent 11 weeks in neonatal intensive care before passing away. Though independent confirmation of the child's passing was limited, the emotional toll on the community was undeniable. After months of legal proceedings, the case reached its conclusion. On January 14th, 2025, Isaiah Fields pleaded guilty to aggravated criminal assault. The court sentenced him to 25 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections. He was also ordered to register for life under the state's offender registry. The case remains one of the most shocking incidents in Illinois' recent history, a reminder of how fragile trust can be when care and responsibility are betrayed. For the residents of Geneva, the story of Kate is not just a tragedy, but a call for vigilance, reform, and compassion for those who cannot defend themselves. Though justice was served, the heartbreak lingers, and the memory of what happened inside those quiet walls will not be forgotten. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. On the 25th of April, 2025, a peaceful evening at a family restaurant in Albuquerque turned into a scene of chaos that few could have imagined. Families had gathered at Asagio's for dinner. Laughter filled the air, and the aroma of food drifted from the kitchen. Among those present was a family of 3, a father waiting in line, while his wife and their 8-year-old daughter went to admire the fountain nearby. Within minutes, what should have been a normal evening would spiral into a moment that no one in that restaurant would ever forget. Witnesses later recalled seeing a young man sitting alone, appearing restless. Without warning, he stood up, broke a bottle, and in a sudden and shocking act, struck the little girl who was standing near him. Panic erupted. The child's mother screamed, rushing to her daughter's aid, while others in the restaurant froze in disbelief before several brave bystanders quickly intervened. One of them, a man who happened to be married to an off-duty paramedic, grabbed a food tray and struck the attacker in an attempt to stop him. Another bystander, an ICU nurse, ran toward the wounded child to help stop the bleeding. The restaurant was thrown into turmoil. Chairs scattered, plates shattered, and people cried out for help. As the paramedic and the nurse worked together, pressing tightly on the girl's neck to slow the bleeding, police sirens approached in the distance. Officers stormed into the scene as witnesses pointed outside, saying the suspect had fled toward the parking lot.
Looking good there. Am I being Chris? Okay, sir.
I got him.
Okay, you got him?
Yeah, I got him.
Roll around, sir.
Roll around.
Roll around. Roll around. There you go. Hands up. Hands up.
Outside, the officers found a young man, later identified as 24-year-old Nicholas Sansusi, wandering with blood in his hair. The officers demanded that he drop the knife he was holding. After a tense moment, he complied and lay on the ground. Visibly dazed, they handcuffed him and began to check for injuries. His head was bleeding, though it wasn't immediately clear how it had happened. A small folding knife and a pair of scissors were found in his pockets. Inside the restaurant, paramedics comforted the terrified girl, assuring her she would be fine, as they worked to stabilize her. Her mother held her close, whispering words of comfort through tears, while her father stood nearby, shaken but grateful for the strangers who had stepped in. As Nicholas sat outside under police watch, officers questioned him gently. He seemed confused, claiming he needed medical help, and muttering about not remembering much. When asked his name, he replied quietly, Nicholas Sansose. A quick record check revealed he had an active misdemeanor warrant. Because of his injury, paramedics were called to assess him before taking him to the station. Inside, officers began speaking with witnesses. The restaurant's customers recounted what they had seen. Nicholas had suddenly approached the child, struck her with a bottle, and attempted to harm her further before being tackled by several people. The father described hearing his daughter's scream and his wife's cries for help before racing toward them. He recalled a tall man, Nicholas, swinging the bottle, and the chaos that followed. The husband of the off-duty paramedic confirmed that he had been the one to hit Nicholas with a tray to stop him. He wouldn't stop struggling, he explained. Everyone just tried to pull him off the girl. When asked why he had done it, Nicholas reportedly told someone, "She got in my way." His statement left everyone stunned. When police asked the restaurant manager about Nicholas, they learned he was a new employee who had been struggling with his mental health. The manager explained that Nicholas had mentioned feeling isolated and depressed, living alone far from home, and had made concerning comments earlier in the week. As paramedics treated Nicholas's head wound, his story began to shift. He told officers he wasn't sure how he got hurt and claimed he might have memory loss. When asked if he had taken anything that day, he said no, though later he admitted to occasional recreational use of substances like marijuana or ketamine. His account of the incident was inconsistent, at one point claiming he had simply dropped his beer when the child stepped in his way. Meanwhile, police brought the girl's father outside to confirm the attacker's identity. When the father saw Nicholas, he didn't hesitate. "That's him," he said firmly. "That's the man who attacked my daughter." Nicholas looked up weakly and murmured, "She got in my way. I'm sorry." The father replied with anger and disbelief, holding back his emotions as officers guided him away. A crime scene specialist arrived soon after to document the injuries. The young girl had several deep cuts along her neck and chin, scratches behind her ears, and a wound on her hand, injuries that would later require 19 stitches in total. Her mother also had cuts on her hand from trying to defend her daughter. Photographs were taken, and the family prepared to leave for the hospital, escorted by officers who promised to bring justice. Later, security footage from the restaurant was reviewed. Though partially obscured by glare, it showed Nicholas walking near the child, with a bottle in his hand. Moments later, chaos unfolded as the girl and her mother ran, Nicholas following close behind. Then a man was seen striking Nicholas with a tray, and the struggle that witnesses described became visible on the grainy footage. When Nicholas was later discharged from the hospital, he was booked into the Metropolitan Detention Center. In May of 2025, he was indicted by a Bernalillo County grand jury on multiple felony charges, including child abuse resulting in serious injury, aggravated battery, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He pleaded not guilty and remains in custody without bond, awaiting trial. For the family, the night that began with plans for dinner became a lasting memory of terror, but also of courage. The quick response from strangers, nurses, and police likely saved the young girl's life. Though the wounds will heal with time, the emotional scars from that night will take far longer to fade. On the 24th of July, 2024, the online storage company Dropbox alerted authorities to a troubling discovery. Their automated system had flagged a video containing deeply inappropriate material involving minors. Following standard protocol, they immediately forwarded the report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. What initially appeared to be a routine digital tip would soon unravel into one of the most disturbing criminal cases the state of Texas had ever encountered. Just a few weeks later, on the 6th of August, 2024, the Tom Green County Sheriff's Office received the case and began their investigation. Their search quickly led to a 57-year-old man named James Wilson, who lived in San Angelo, Texas. Investigators obtained enough evidence to issue a search warrant, and on the 21st of August, They moved in simultaneously on both his home and his workplace, a local company called McLachlan Advertising. When officers approached James, he seemed confused.
Do you have any idea what this is about, James?
No.
Do you go by James or Michael?
Michael,
and that's your middle name? Like I told you inside, I've got a search warrant. I'm going to give you a copy of it here in just a minute.
Uncertain about the reason for their visit, as they explained the nature of the warrant, he nervously asked if it was about the AI images and stuff. When they confirmed it was, his demeanor shifted from confusion to quiet panic. He was told he wasn't under arrest at that moment, but that the police were executing a search warrant on his home, his car, his workplace, and his electronic devices. As the officers informed him that a separate team was already at his house, he broke down, repeating that his wife was home with their 2 newly adopted children, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. "My marriage is over now," he muttered through tears. At the same time, officers arrived at the Wilson residence, where they were greeted by his wife, Jenny. She was calm at first, unaware of what was unfolding. When officers told her they had a search warrant, she asked why, her voice trembling. When they explained that it involved her husband and illegal material related to minors, Jenny's confusion turned into disbelief and panic. Her first thought was for her children, then for her husband, and finally for the animals she cared for through her nonprofit pet rescue. She could barely form words, overwhelmed by the shock. Inside, the officers found a modest family home, filled with the signs of an ordinary life: children's toys, pet supplies, and photographs of smiling faces. Jenny sat at the kitchen table with investigators, still trying to process what she was hearing. She insisted she had never suspected anything. She said her family was passionate about protecting children. They had even gone to see a popular film about child exploitation, and had been deeply moved by it. They had adopted 3 children, she said proudly, and she never noticed any behavior from James that raised concern. However, as detectives interviewed James, the truth began to unfold. He admitted that everything had started when he caught his 13-year-old daughter sending inappropriate pictures to a man online. He confronted her, but instead of moving on from the incident, he became fixated. He claimed that it sparked something in him, an unhealthy curiosity that led him down a dark online path. He said he began looking at similar material on the internet, collecting and saving it in organized folders within his Dropbox account. When asked about the content, James admitted he had joined online chat groups where strangers shared explicit videos. He said he created folders to sort the files, and even used social media to pose as a young girl to communicate with others. Investigators later discovered an Instagram account where he pretended to be an 11-year-old under the username Smoke Obsession. Through this disguise, he had contacted multiple minors, sending and receiving inappropriate material. Back at the Wilson home, Jenny was shown images recovered from his devices. Her hands trembled as she denied recognizing the rooms or the people in the pictures. Then investigators revealed something that shattered her completely. Among the files was a folder named with the initials of one of her adopted daughters. Inside were several photos and 7 secretly recorded videos taken from a hidden camera disguised as a party light in her daughter's bedroom. The files dated back to February 2022, when the girl was just 13. Alongside those videos were dozens of text documents written by James, containing detailed fictional stories about children. The detectives carefully explained to Jenny that the case was still under investigation, and that she was not under arrest, but the pain in her expression showed that her world had already fallen apart. James, meanwhile, broke down in his interview room. He told investigators he wasn't attracted to children, insisting that his actions stemmed from an uncontrollable addiction, rather than intent. Officers compared his behavior to that of an addict, someone who knew what they were doing was wrong, but couldn't stop.
I'm not attracted to children, per se. It's like I have a baby girl. I have, teenage girl.
He said he knew his marriage was destroyed and feared that Child Protective Services would take their adopted children away. When officers searched his belongings, they found an external hard drive hidden among his things. Inside were 3 concealed folders, containing over 2,700 videos of explicit and illegal nature involving minors, with a total runtime of more than 200 hours. Some of the material combined both animal and child exploitation, making the discovery even more appalling. Investigators later learned that Jenny's animal rescue organization often kept dozens of stray dogs in their home, which explained how some of those files had been recorded there. When the truth finally reached Jenny, she collapsed into tears, unable to believe what her husband had done. "I can't believe you would do that to us," she cried, before gathering herself enough to continue cooperating with authorities. James Wilson was officially arrested on the 21st of August, 2024. Federal prosecutors charged him with the production and transportation of illegal material involving minors. On the 31st of March, 2025, he was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole, along with $106,500 in restitution to his victims. In the months that followed, Jenny filed for divorce, cutting all ties to the man she once believed she knew. The family home, once filled with laughter and the joy of adoption, became a symbol of betrayal and pain. She devoted herself to rebuilding her life and protecting her children from the shadow of what had happened. What began with a single flagged file in a digital storage system had uncovered a double life, hidden behind a mask of normalcy. It served as a chilling reminder that the darkest secrets can sometimes exist behind the most ordinary doors. On the 14th of February, 2018, the quiet city of Parkland, Florida, was shaken by an event that would remain etched in the nation's memory. It was a warm Valentine's Day morning, and students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School were exchanging cards, chocolates, and laughter, completely unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The day began like any other, with parents dropping off their children, teachers preparing lesson plans, and the sound of morning chatter echoing through the hallways. Yet behind that normal routine, a storm was silently building. Nicholas Cruz, a 19-year-old former student of the school, had been preparing for weeks. In the days leading up to the tragedy, he spent his time practicing at a shooting range, recording videos, and describing what he intended to do. These recordings later became chilling evidence of his mindset: calm, deliberate, and disturbingly detached. In one of those videos, he introduced himself with an unsettling tone, saying he wanted to make his mark in the world in the most horrifying way imaginable.
It's gonna be a big event.
That Valentine's Day morning, Cruz arrived at his former school, carrying a semi-automatic rifle. Students and teachers were going about their normal routines, moving between classes, laughing with friends, and making weekend plans, unaware of the danger about to unfold. Within minutes, the peaceful rhythm of school life turned to chaos. Panic spread through the hallways as the sound of gunfire echoed through the building. 14 students and 3 staff members lost their lives, while countless others were left injured and traumatized. The entire incident lasted only 6 minutes, yet it changed hundreds of lives forever. Security footage later showed the confusion and fear inside the building. Children sprinted through hallways, while others took cover in classrooms, hiding behind desks and doors. Teachers did everything they could to shield their students, whispering words of comfort and praying for safety. Meanwhile, Cruz moved through the corridors with a cold sense of purpose, methodically carrying out what he had planned. Investigators later revealed that he gained entry through an unlocked and unmonitored door, a tragic oversight that raised nationwide questions about school security and emergency preparedness. When the violence finally ended, Cruz managed to slip away in the chaos. He blended in with the terrified crowd of fleeing students, walking calmly through the neighborhood as if nothing had happened. Law enforcement officers from multiple agencies quickly mobilized, surrounding the area within minutes. Police body cameras later captured the moment. Officers apprehended him without resistance. It was a surreal sight, a young man quietly surrendering, while the community around him was in shock and disbelief. In the interrogation room, Cruz's behavior shifted unpredictably. At moments, he sat in silence, avoiding eye contact. At others, he spoke of inner voices that he claimed had tormented him for years. He appeared detached from reality, sometimes striking himself or muttering incoherently. Detectives observed a young man who seemed consumed by guilt one moment and lost in confusion the next. His statements offered glimpses into a deeply troubled mind, but they also left investigators questioning how no one had been able to prevent what happened. During the trial, prosecutors presented footage, witness accounts, and forensic evidence that left little doubt about premeditation. They described in detail how carefully Cruz had planned the attack, and how his past behavior had shown repeated warning signs. Teachers, counselors, and even law enforcement had interacted with him in the years prior. Yet no single intervention was enough to stop his downward spiral. Medical experts testified about the impact of the weapon he used, while survivors bravely recounted their experiences, their voices trembling but determined to be heard. While awaiting trial, Cruz's conduct continued to draw attention. Surveillance footage from jail showed him involved in a violent altercation with an officer, an act that reinforced the image of a young man battling severe emotional instability. Mental health professionals were brought in to assess his state of mind, but opinions varied. Some believed he understood his actions completely, while others argued that his judgment had long been clouded by trauma and untreated psychological struggles. When the time came for sentencing, the courtroom was filled with a heavy silence. Families of the victims sat side by side, holding photographs of their loved ones, waiting for justice. Cruz faced the judge with little emotion. He pleaded guilty to 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. In a quiet voice, he expressed remorse, saying he thought about his actions every day and wished for a second chance to do good for others. "I know you don't believe me," he said to the victims' families, "but I have to live with this every single day." The judge, maintaining a solemn and steady tone, delivered the final decision: life in prison without the possibility of parole. It was a sentence that ensured he would never walk free again. Yet for many, that decision brought little comfort. Parents and siblings of the victims stood before cameras and reporters, voicing their heartbreak and disappointment. Some wept as they spoke, saying no punishment could ever balance the loss of a child, a friend, or a loved one. In the years since that tragic day, the Parkland community has continued to heal, slowly but resiliently. Vigils, memorials, and advocacy efforts have emerged, each honoring the lives lost and pushing for change. The event became a turning point for discussions on school safety, mental health awareness, and the importance of early intervention. Though time has passed, the memory of that Valentine's Day remains vivid, a reminder of both human fragility and the strength that can rise from unimaginable pain. Just past midnight on November 14, 2022, a Milwaukee police officer responded to what appeared to be a simple welfare check in a quiet neighborhood. The caller was worried about their 75-year-old neighbor, a woman named Dorothy, who lived with a 31-year-old man called Israel. The two were not related, which already made the situation unusual. The officer had no idea that this call would turn into a life-threatening encounter. Israel had a criminal record that included armed robbery, carrying a concealed weapon, theft, and several disorderly conduct charges. When the officer arrived, Israel spoke to him through the window before finally letting him inside. As the officer entered the home, Israel picked up a steel brake rotor, something that weighed around 20 pounds, and placed it against the door. When the officer asked why, Israel calmly said it was to stop the door from swinging open. This action, however, meant the only exit was now blocked.
What, this one?
Yeah.
What's that for?
Oh no, to block the door and swings open.
Gotcha.
Inside, the room was dimly lit. The officer asked about Dorothy, to which Israel replied that she was right here. The officer looked around, confused, until he noticed a figure lying on the bed, covered from head to toe. When he asked if Dorothy was asleep, Israel said yes, explaining that she often wet the bed, which was why she was covered with a bag. The officer, sensing something was off, asked Israel to uncover her. That's when he saw the truth. Dorothy was no longer alive. The officer immediately stepped back and called for backup.
Miss Dorothy? Why don't you got flowers and stuff on her like that? Okay, step back. Step back.
She's dead.
His voice was calm but tense as he ordered Israel to put his hands up and turn around. Israel obeyed at first, but his eyes locked onto the officer in a way that made him uneasy. The officer warned him not to move or make sudden gestures. Yet, within seconds, the situation spiraled out of control. As the officer tried to handcuff him, Israel began to resist. A struggle broke out. The officer managed to get one cuff on, but couldn't secure the other. He pressed the emergency button on his radio, signaling for immediate assistance. During the scuffle, Israel grabbed a metal pole, about 2.5 feet long, and tried to take the officer's firearm. The officer repeatedly shouted for him to stop, warning that he could be seriously hurt if he continued. But Israel didn't stop. Backup officers rushed to the scene, forcing their way through the door that had been barricaded. Inside, chaos filled the small room. The officer pleaded with Israel to drop the metal object, repeating over and over that he didn't want to use force, but Israel, clearly distressed and unpredictable, threw the steel brake rotor at the officer. The heavy metal barely missed his head. In that moment of danger, the officer had no choice but to fire his weapon to protect himself. The shot struck Israel, who fell to the ground but survived. Officers quickly handcuffed him and called for medical help. The officer, who suffered only minor injuries, was treated and released from the hospital later that day. He had served 4 years on the force. A medical examiner was called to examine Dorothy. Surprisingly, there were no signs of injury or trauma. It was later determined that she had passed away from lung cancer, though the exact time of her death remained uncertain. Authorities began a full investigation to determine if the officer's use of force had been justified. On December 5, 2022, after reviewing the case, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office ruled that the officer's actions were lawful. He would not face any charges. Israel, however, faced multiple counts, including battery of a law enforcement officer, resisting arrest, and violating previous bail conditions. By February 2023, a court ruled that Israel was not mentally competent to stand trial, but that he might recover with treatment. He was sent for over 60 days of mental health restoration. In May, doctors still found him unfit, leading to extended treatment. By late July, he was declared competent again, and his bail was set at $55,000. In August, he pleaded not guilty and managed to post $5,000 in cash bond. After 10 months in custody, the charges were initially dismissed in February 2024, and his bail money was refunded. But the story didn't end there. In March, prosecutors refiled charges for attempting to disarm a peace officer, resisting or obstructing an officer, and bail jumping. Once again, he entered a plea of not guilty. As of June 2024, the case remained open. Israel also faced separate charges for stalking and violating a restraining order related to a domestic case. The incident serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly a simple welfare check can turn into a matter of life and death. These types of calls are unpredictable. Officers never truly know what awaits them behind a door. Sometimes, the person in need is simply asleep or away from home, but at other times, things take a tragic or dangerous turn. In this situation, the officer had every reason to be cautious. He was in a confined space, with his only exit blocked, and standing across from a man showing erratic behavior. The moment the officer discovered that Dorothy had passed, the situation shifted from a welfare concern to a potentially violent confrontation. Despite the chaos, the officer followed his training. He tried repeatedly to de-escalate the situation, even after Israel resisted and acted unpredictably. His restraint likely saved his life and prevented further tragedy. The quick arrival of backup officers and medical responders ensured that both the suspect and the officer survived the encounter. The Milwaukee Police Department later used this case as an example of why welfare checks can be among the most unpredictable calls in law enforcement. They require empathy but also extreme caution. What began as a neighbor's concern ended with a fight for survival and an investigation that would stretch on for nearly 2 years. In the end, the 75-year-old woman's death was found to be from natural causes, and the officer's actions were cleared as justified. Yet the memory of that night, what began as a simple check on someone's well-being, will likely stay with everyone involved. It was a stark reminder that even in moments meant to bring help, danger can appear without warning. In November 2024, police in Las Vegas, Nevada, were called to perform a welfare check on 68-year-old Monique Gilbertson. A close friend had grown increasingly worried after not hearing from her for more than 2 weeks. Monique was known for being in constant touch with people around her, and she never left town without informing her neighbors or the apartment management. When officers arrived at her home in the northeast part of the city, They were surprised to find a man they had never seen before living inside. The man identified himself as Daniel Rausch, a 37-year-old who claimed he was renting the house from Monique. He appeared startled when the police showed up and immediately tried to block them from entering. The more the officers tried to ask him simple questions, the more nervous he became.
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, we've been knocking
Well, I rent this place.
What's your name?
My name's Jaslyn.
Where's Monique at?
Monique is, I'm house sitting right now. She left town for a while.
Where is she? No, she didn't. Where is she?
No, she really did, I swear.
Okay, where is she?
I mean,
Her car's here.
I know her car's here. She has me house sitting. I have I got my rent receipts.
You're not supposed to be here. Come outside.
Huh?
Come outside.
She doesn't have anyone here.
No, I have rent receipts right here, actually.
Okay, come outside.
Well, I'm
let's
not gonna come
talk.
outside right now. I have paperwork that I'm supposed to be here. Like, you know what I mean? And like,
You need to come outside and show us that paperwork.
Daniel stammered through his sentences, changing his story multiple times. First, he said he was renting the place, then said he was just house sitting while Monique was out of town. But the officers noticed something off. Monique's car was still in the driveway, and her beloved dogs were still inside the house. Daniel tried to insist that Monique had gone to the East Coast to visit her brother, and that she had asked him to take care of the house and her pets. But when officers asked for a way to contact her, he couldn't provide a working number. He mumbled that she had lost her phone and claimed she now used a friend's number. Though he couldn't recall it, each question from the officers made him more uneasy. He refused to step outside when ordered, saying he didn't trust the situation. The police patiently explained that they were only there to make sure Monique was safe, not to accuse him of anything. Still, Daniel continued to delay. He asked to warn his wife, who he said was inside, and repeatedly tried to stall the officers with excuses. His behavior grew increasingly suspicious. Officers also learned from the apartment office that no one named Daniel was ever registered to live there. The management confirmed that Monique was always in contact with them several times a day, and they hadn't heard from her since the 22nd of October. That detail alone raised serious concern. Finally, after several tense minutes, Daniel and his wife, Gina Lopez, reluctantly stepped outside. Once they were secured, police moved in to check the home. The officers entered a dark, messy house, filled with a heavy odor that made their stomachs turn. It was clear that something terrible had happened. The place was in disarray, cluttered with trash and personal belongings scattered across the floor. Every step echoed with unease as they searched through each room carefully. Then, in one of the back rooms, an officer noticed something unusual. A large freezer pushed against the wall and locked with a metal clasp. It was covered with a few items, almost as if someone had tried to hide it from sight. The locksmith who had helped the officers enter the house was still nearby, so they asked him to help open it. As soon as Daniel realized what they were about to do, his calm facade broke. He began shouting that they had no right to touch the freezer, pleading for them to stop. His reaction only made their suspicion stronger. The locksmith quickly undid the lock, and as the lid creaked open, the awful smell confirmed their fears. Inside was the body of Monique Gilbertson. The discovery left everyone in shock. Officers stepped back, visibly shaken, realizing they had just uncovered the horrifying truth. Daniel and Gina were immediately taken into custody. At first, Daniel tried to explain the situation away. He told detectives that he found Monique unconscious, claiming there were signs of drug use nearby. He said he panicked and hid her body because he didn't know what to do. But that explanation didn't match the evidence. When an autopsy was performed, the results were devastating. Monique had been injected with a massive dose of fentanyl, more than 200 times the amount that could cause a fatal overdose. The toxicology report ruled out any possibility of an accident. Under pressure, Gina eventually came forward and told investigators what really happened. It turned out that Daniel and Monique had met months earlier at a local home improvement store. Monique, known for her kind and trusting nature, offered Daniel a place to stay in exchange for helping with household chores and maintenance. For a while, everything seemed fine, but things took a turn. Monique began to suspect that Daniel and Gina were stealing from her. There were also constant disagreements over cleanliness and how they treated her home. When Monique finally asked them to move out, Daniel refused to accept it. Detectives believe Daniel decided that if he eliminated Monique, he could take over her house and possessions. According to Gina's statement, Daniel prepared a syringe filled with fentanyl and injected Monique, while she was at home. Afterward, the pair moved her body into the freezer, hoping to hide the evidence long enough to make it seem like she had left town. When Monique's friends and neighbors realized she had vanished, their calls to her went unanswered. Eventually, her worried friend reached out to the police, leading to the welfare check that uncovered the truth. Daniel was charged with multiple offenses, including murder, elder abuse, and possession of illegal substances. Gina was also charged with burglary and possession of controlled drugs. Investigators said that the crime showed both cruelty and calculation, especially considering how Monique had opened her home to help them. As of now, the case is still making its way through the courts. Daniel is awaiting trial, which is scheduled for October 2025. If found guilty, he faces a possible life sentence. For those who knew Monique, the discovery left them heartbroken. They described her as warm, generous, and always ready to lend a helping hand. Her kindness was taken advantage of by someone she trusted, and that betrayal left an entire community shaken. The tragic story of Monique Gilbertson serves as a painful reminder of how compassion can sometimes be met with unimaginable cruelty. Yet through it all, her memory continues to live on in the hearts of those who loved her. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this video informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what we drop next. We cover stories like this almost every day, and trust me, you don't want to be left behind. If you can't wait until the next upload, there are more videos popping up on your screen in just a few seconds. Click one and keep watching. Until then, take care.